Hello. Today I will be talking about engaging indigenous communities to improve comprehension of informed consent for genomics research. Addressing disparities in diseases and outcomes between high and low and middle income countries requires epidemiological and genomic research. In addition to persistence of infectious diseases and diseases of poverty, LMICs are faced with rapidly rising incidence of non-communicable diseases. The rate at which these non-communicable diseases are occurring and their co-occurrence with persistent epidemics of infectious diseases is unprecedented in human history and presents novel challenges. Addressing these challenges requires research to be conducted in the affected communities because the outcomes of research conducted in one community may not be readily translated into others, particularly where there is significant disparity in resource levels. Similar to high-income countries, there are levels of availability of resources and access to healthcare even within countries. Oftentimes, the highest prevalence of infectious diseases and NCDs, their risk factors, and the worst outcomes are seen among indigenous populations in those countries, both high and low middle income. Therefore, research and implementation science studies in these indigenous communities needs to be a priority. However, concern is expressed about the validity of informed consent for research when research is conducted in indigenous communities because of low levels of education and awareness of modern genomic and precision medicine. It is well established that for consent to be valid, participants must be given adequate information about the research that they've been invited to participate in. However, disclosure of adequate amounts of information is not sufficient. Participants must comprehend the information that has been provided to them. Comprehension is a process of simultaneously extracting and constructing meaning through interaction and involvement, typically with written language, but can also be with visual and spoken language. So comprehension has three main components: the material that is to be comprehended, the reader or the person that is expected to comprehend the material, and then the activity to which the comprehension is related, in this instance, genomic research. And several studies have examined the determinants of comprehension, and they have reported that the determinants include age of participants, their educational level, their reading ability, professional background, their cognitive status, and the level of oversight that's provided in the informed consent process. Based on these predictors, several interventions have been proposed to improve the comprehension of informed consent. We therefore decided to study the comprehension of informed consent among participants in a genomic study of breast cancer in Nigeria. We administered surveys on comprehension of informed consent to 106 patients and 109 control engaged in a case control study of the genetic risk of breast cancer in Nigeria. We conducted audio-taped key informant interviews in a subsample of 8% of the participants. Most of the women involved in this study were married. More than half of them reported having received a high school education or higher. Most participants were able to read the consent form, and we did not find any difference in the ability to read the consent form between the cases and the controls. The time between our study and when participants gave consent for the genetic epidemiology study was longer for cases compared to control. Our findings were all the participants involved in the study reported that they were told the purpose of the study. And most of the breast cancer patients, 83%, compared to 53% of the control participants, reported correctly that the purpose of the study was to learn about the genetic inheritance of breast cancer. Most of the participants reported that they were told about the study benefits, and 68% of patients, compared to 47% of controls, reported being told about the risks of the study. In the qualitative section of our study, we elicited the following responses from some of the participants. A control participant said the researchers want to see if cancer is an inherited disease or if something else is causing the disease. A case participant said the purpose of the study is to enlighten us more about breast cancer and ways by which we can prevent it. They are trying to find out if the gene in our body has cancer. Another participant said the purpose is that if one had already passed through the blood test that the researchers offered, it is possible to know if the disease is a hereditary one, so that measures can be taken to prevent it from continuing to spread. Yet another case participant said the researchers will be able to learn the cause of cancer in our body and to learn if it is hereditary, something we have inherited from our parents, and help us to know so we will not pass it on to our children. We concluded from this study that the skill of the research staff in eliciting informed consent was very crucial. We came to this conclusion because several other studies had reported low levels of comprehension of informed consent in genomic research in Africa. We surmise that the disease type may also contribute to the high level of comprehension that we found. Participants in breast cancer studies may be much more engaged because of perceived severity of the diagnosis. An educational level we found was a significant predictor of reporting being told the purpose of the study was a genetic epidemiology study. We therefore recommended that consent forms should be modified by substituting words such as in your genes with words like in your blood in areas where the term blood is used to signify genes, thereby focusing on brevity and clarity. We believe that simplified consent forms that use clear and linguistically relevant terms should be developed and tested with individuals participating in genetic research in culturally diverse settings globally. And we recommended that when the potential risks associated with a study are high, investigators might consider not enrolling participants unless adequate levels of comprehension can be assured. So with this background, we then moved on to design a new study, which we called Indigenous Linguistic and Cultural Concepts of Heritability and Comprehension of Genomics Research in Nigeria. The objective of this study was to explore linguistic and cultural concepts among indigenous populations who are participating in genomics of breast cancer research and use what we learn about these concepts to improve comprehension of informed consent. To identify these concepts, we conducted 12 focus group discussions with 10 participants each. We ensured balance within these groups by age, gender, and religion. We used guides that were carefully edited to avoid preloading with concepts that may inadvertently influence participants' answers. Each focus group discussion lasted an average of 1 hour, and they were conducted in the local language, Yoruba. All the discussions were recorded and transcribed. Further, we enrolled 25 individuals who are considered key opinion leaders and custodians of community oral traditions for key informant interviews. We used scenario-based interview guides that we updated based on the results of our FGDs. We carefully edited the KII guides to avoid preloading, and we employed reflexive methods during the interviews and noted participants' observations and subjective expressions. So this slide shows us at one of the venues of the focus group discussions in the participants. And here are female participants reflecting a mixture of people from different religious backgrounds and age. And here is one of our interviewers talking to a key informant. We used thematic approach to analyze the FGDs and KII. We reviewed the transcribed recordings and used an iterative process to generate an initial level of codes, which were evaluated for secondary and tertiary level codings. Then we grouped the related codes into families and created networks of hierarchical themes. We analyzed each network for emerging themes and kept memos containing contextual information during this process. We used the consolidated criteria for reporting qualitative research to describe our results. Our findings were that the respondents in general affirmed that the Yoruba believe traits like character, attributes like height, illnesses like sickle cell disease and psychosis were heritable. They affirmed that Yoruba have a culture of engaging private investigators and intermediaries to investigate family histories, particularly within the context of marriages. The respondents also reported that Yoruba have a lot of words, proverbs, aphorisms, idioms that indicate heritability, and that heritability is mediated as an essence in the blood rather than in the materiality of the blood. For example, ejerun literally means blood smells, but actually means the perception of heritability in the blood. This is used, for example, when a child is behaving in ways similar to other members of the child's family. Respondents also indicated that Yoruba are aware that some traits or illnesses are sex-linked and that they are passed down one sex in the family, or that some traits are recessive and may skip generations. Participants also expressed understanding of the concept of dominant traits by saying "Ẹ̀jẹ̀ kan lè mú ju ìkejì lọ." That is, one blood could be stronger than the other in the context of transmitting heritable characteristics. The concept of dominant traits in the mind of the participants was not gendered, so the stronger blood may be that of the male or the female. Based on our results, we created an online database of indigenous genomic words and concepts, and we expanded our target population to all sub-Saharan African populations and invited researchers to contribute to support the development of this database. The database is a robust and rich online repository of indigenous genomic words, concepts, and expressions. Presently, there are 5 indigenous languages represented, and these languages are spoken in 11 countries. The database website also shows our research methodology, and we encourage collaborators to replicate this methodology for similar studies in their population. We believe that this will facilitate communication and adequate comprehension of the consent process by African participants in genomic research. And this database will therefore enhance the conduct of genomic research in these populations. So this shows the invitation to contribute to the database. In conclusion, Yoruba are aware of concepts of heritability and have words, idioms, proverbs, aphorisms, and sayings in the native language that's used to effectively communicate these concepts and these words can be appropriated for use in the context of genomic research. We developed an enhanced consent form that's based on our findings and uses these words and ideas from the native populations. And we're currently conducting a randomized clinical trial comparing this enhanced consent form with the standard consent form in an ongoing genomics of breast cancer research project, and we will shortly be reporting our results. Remains for me to thank my collaborators who worked on this project, interviewing participants, transcribing and analyzing data, and writing the studies. I've also listed here the funding sources and declared that the opinions expressed do not reflect the position of the funding organizations, and to thank the staff and faculty of the Center for Bioethics and Research in Ibadan, which was the base where this study was conducted. Thank you very much.